Hey everyone, I'm Sue Daley. Welcome to my new sew along, Speke Hall. Today I just want to talk to you quickly before I start about the history as to why I have named the fabric collection Faith, Hope and Love and the pattern Speke Hall. So probably you've read on my Instagram that this particular fabric collection was dedicated to my late husband, and it was just a lot of memories of things that in our past that I've referenced to the fabric. The particular pattern, which is, oops, all my bits have fallen out, sorry, Speke Hall. The reason I named it Speke Hall was because Jim came from a place in the UK, from Liverpool, from a place called Speke. Now, he talked a lot about the memories he had of a place called Speke Hall where he grew up, and his uncle was the groundsman. His father had passed away when he was just 3 weeks old, and he spent a lot of time in this particular manor house with his uncle and his friends, and they roamed the grounds extensively, found all the secret tunnels and things and armor and everything in this particular manor house, and he had such great stories of his childhood. So I just thought it was quite apt to name this particular quilt after that place. So I have been there myself, and I did go there with Jim and some of my family, and you'll probably see some of the photos up of what, you know, that we took when we were there last. So what I want to do is just remind you that you need to have a pattern for this sew along. You can't just do it from the video. So basically I'm just talking you through each block because it does look quite daunting, but it really isn't. It's just squares, half square triangles and rectangles to put it together. Now each block, we're going to run this for 12 weeks. Each block is repeated 4 times except for block 8. And block 8 we're going to do it 8 times. So every block that you do will be 4 of each, and then block number 8 will be, you'll do 8 of that one, which is quite a simple block anyway. So we're going to start with week 1, and I'm just going to reference to a bigger pattern just so that you can see it, because this is a little bit small on the video. So I've just printed it off a little larger. So what you'll see is in the pattern that I have actually put the fabrics that I've used. Now you can use whatever fabric you want. You don't have to use this collection Faith, Hope and Love. You can use whatever you want, but you can reference what I've used so that it makes it a little easier when you're choosing your own fabrics. And you know, you might be really clever and you want to do it way different to me, and that's okay too. I'm more than happy for you to make it your own. So there's a few pages of that. And then we go into, it just talks about doing half square triangles. So each time I make a block, I always do all my half square triangles for those blocks first, and then I can just put everything together after I've cut the rest of it out. So it shows you the directions for that, and then all your blocks are laid out. Block 1, 2, 3. This is how I've put them together, and this is how it finishes up. So there is a sequence. Sometimes when you're doing machining, you need to work out the easiest way to put blocks together. So you're sewing in sort of short rows and then adding a piece down the side, or it just needs to be easy. So I've stated that in all of these pages. So basically that's just, it goes through with all of that, and then it shows you how to put it all together. So we're going to start with block 1, which is this block here. So we've got some big squares, some little squares, a couple of rectangles and some half square triangles. As I said before, I start with my half square triangles first, and I'm just going to show you how I do that. Just most of you probably already know, or you have a way of doing them yourself, but the way I do them, I'm just going to show you my way. It's not always the way that everybody else is going to do it, it's just the way I do it. So when we're making these half square triangles, we want to make 2.5 inch blocks, or 2 inch finished blocks. So I always start with a 3 inch square. Now often you'll find people will require you to cut a 2 7/8 inch square. Really? That's fine, that works great for some people, but for me it doesn't, because it just doesn't. So I cut a 3 inch square because I can trim it back you know, when you're making half square triangles, you can trim it back and it's nice and square and you're starting off with everything just right. So I cut 3-inch squares. So it'll tell you in the pattern to cut 3-inch squares. So I have two. I put my right sides together and I'm going to sew them. But first of all, I take my square, the lightest one, and I put it onto my sandpaper board and I just rule a line from corner to corner, like so. We put them together, right sides together, and then what you're going to do is you are going to sew either side of that line, 1/4 inch either side of that line. So if you have a 1/4 inch foot on your sewing machine, you can run the edge of the foot along the drawn line, so you've got a sewing line one side, and then turn it around and sew down the other side, and you'll have a sewing line down the other side. Once you've done that, you'll end up with this. Okay, then what we're going to do is, I'll just pop that out of the way, bring my cutting mat in. I don't know whether you noticed, but I got my new cutting mat, my new big pink one, which is really nice. I'm going to cut this with my cutter right down along the pencil line. Okay, so take your ruler, whatever ruler you choose to use. I've just got a tiny little ruler right now. And you will end up with 2 squares exactly the same. Okay, now we need to press those. So I always set my seams when I'm pressing, so I always press the stitching line first, and then I open it up and put the dark on the top, and then I'm going to open it up and press it out, and again press it out. Alright, so then we have 2 squares. We've got little tails. Now we want to get rid of those. So those squares are not the right size. They need to measure 2.5 inches. So I have a little Holt trim it ruler here, a 2.5 inch trim it ruler. The reason I love this is because it has a 1/4 inch all the way around the outside. It's got your diagonal line, so when you're cutting your half square triangles, you can line up your diagonals exactly, and then you can trim your square back exactly to 2.5 inches. So I'm just going to place the diagonal right through where my stitching line is. Make sure the corners of my ruler line up with the sewing line, and then I'm going to cut and there we have it, nice and square. So when you're starting off square, it just means everything else comes together much more easily, and you've trimmed all your little dog ears and everything off, which is great. So we will trim both of those up. Just pop that to one side. Now, so I would do all of my half square triangles first. So it'll tell you in the pattern how many to make and what to make it with. Okay, so with this particular block, we're going to need a 4.5 inch square here and here. They're both exactly the same. A 4.5 inch square here of a different fabric, and another one here of a different fabric. We need some rectangles, 2.5 by 4.5, and some little squares, 2.5 inch. Okay, so I would firstly, once you've got all that done, I've made up my half square triangles, and then I would sew these together, which will make your little rectangle. Then you're going to sew these 2 together. And then once you've got those here, we're going to sew this. Let me just reference it up to the top here. We're going to sew this to this, and then we're going to sew this. Okay, so we're going to sew this little group here. So that's going to look like this. Okay, so you can see, I've probably got it upside down now, this way. You've got that to that. Okay, and then underneath we're going to sew this one, which is this one here, like that, and we will sew this to this, and that way you're going to have this whole section here. Then when we go to the next piece, we're going to sew the square to this block and then to this block. So we have a whole long piece. So then when we go to sew that, this becomes we've got this, and then we're just going to sew this to this. Okay, now what I do, I'm going to show you a little trick of what I do, and I don't know whether other people do it. I do it because I just do it. No, the reason I do it is, being serious, is that when you use pins, for me, everybody has these little things that, you know, you find a way to do something that can be a little better for you personally. So when I'm sewing on my sewing machine, you know, there's always, it always comes through that when you're putting two layers together, there's always one that sticks out further when you're finished at the end. Always. It doesn't matter what I do, always happens. No matter how many pins I put in it, always happens. So the thing that I found helped me was that if I glued my seams together with a tiny little bit of applique glue, and then I press it so it sets, and then I put it through the machine, nothing moves. So everything is always really square, and then you can always marry up your intersections here, where you nest them together here. So what I do is, once I've got this piece, and then I'm going to sew this piece to the bottom here. So what I do is I take some applique glue, it's just the Daley applique glue. Now you just need a tiny wee bit of it, and I'm just going to put a little spot, and I put a spot on the seam. So I would put a spot on that seam there where we're going to nest, and then one in the middle there, one here, but right close to the edge, because you don't want it coming over into your seam allowance, because then you're going to have to sort of pull it apart. You're going to take the other piece, lay it on the top, nest your seams together, so make sure they nest in there. You can feel it in your fingers. Line everything up, press it. So when I'm doing a lot of stuff like this, I just get I do all of this, and then I can just layer it up and put it through the machine, and there's no worry of me sewing the wrong bit to the wrong bit. It just all works for me. And some of you may not like that, but this is just how I do it. So when I take it to the sewing machine, when I put it through the machine, none of this moves, and nothing's hanging over the edge on either end. It just all goes through and it stays in a place. And I'm not worrying about pins, you know, sewing over my pins, or having to worry about putting pins into a pin cushion, and that just works like that. So we would sew that, which way we got that up? Like this. We'd sew that one, and then we would just run this one down the side here. Okay, so here we have another one right here done. Which way we got it? Like this. Okay, so you need to make 4 of these. So read your instructions carefully, look at the cutting list, and make sure you cut enough for 4 of everything for this block 1. So I hope that's been a help. I hope you give the gluing thing a little try. If you have the same problem that I do, it really does help you. If you don't have that problem, it doesn't matter. It just means you're better than I am on the sewing machine. So I hope you enjoy it. Stay tuned. We're going to be back with you again next week. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel and press the little bell. And then you'll get a notification as to when I've done the video and when it's available to see. So take care until next week. We'll see you then.